I want to start today's deep dive with a really, a very specific and honestly very painful feeling. I think everyone listening has probably been there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You spend, what, like 3 hours tailoring a resume? You write the cover letter, which, let's be honest, it feels like writing a love letter to a brick building.
Right. It's agonizing.
It really is. You hit
Yeah.
send, and then just silence.
The void.
The absolute void. Or maybe you get that automated thank you for your interest email like 3 weeks later, which somehow feels even worse.
The digital equivalent of a door slamming in your face, but in slow motion.
Exactly. And when that happens once, you just brush it off.
Yeah.
Twice, maybe you get a little annoyed. But when it happens 5 or 6 or 10 times in a row, you start spiraling.
You really do.
You start thinking, is it me? Am I completely unhireable? Is the universe just conspiring against my rent payment?
Well, that spiral is exactly what we need to talk about today. Because the source material we're diving into, it comes from an organization called Wright's Resumes and Connections, or WRAC.
Right, W.R.A.C.
And they argue that the spiral is actually the completely wrong reaction. They argue that rejection isn't about luck, and it's often not even about your actual skills. It's really about data.
Yeah, they call the modern labor market a high-stakes filtering mechanism, which frankly sounds like something out of a dystopian sci-fi novel to me.
It does sound ominous, I'll give you that. But their perspective is incredibly grounding. So WRAC is based in Las Vegas, and they've actually been voted the best Las Vegas resume writer for 4 years, running now from 2023 to 2026.
Wow.
Yeah, they've worked with over 1,000 clients, so this isn't just, one person's opinion online. This is based on a decade of solid patterns.
And the core pattern they talk about is this concept of the forensic audit. I really love this framing because it takes the emotion right out of it. It's not a personal tragedy, it's a crime scene, and we just need to find the clues.
Right. And the most important tool in that audit is what they call the rule of 3.
I saw this in the notes, the rule of 3. But why 3? Why not 5, or why not just 1?
Because one rejection is just a fluke. Maybe the hiring manager had a migraine that day. Maybe they already promised the job to the CEO's nephew. You never know.
Yeah, that happens all the time.
Exactly. And 2 rejections, maybe a coincidence. But WRAC's methodology states that once a candidate gets 3 consecutive rejections at the exact same stage of the process, it stops being an anomaly.
It becomes a diagnostic pattern.
Exactly. It's a clear signal. It tells you exactly where the friction is occurring in the hiring funnel. And this is crucial because most people just keep applying.
Right. They think it's a numbers game.
Right.
Like if I just send out 50 more resumes, one will eventually stick.
The spray and pray method?
I have definitely been guilty of that in the past.
I think we all have. But the rule of 3 says you need to stop. If you've been rejected 3 times at the same stage doing the same thing, a 4th time is just insanity.
You have a specific bottleneck.
Yes, and until you fix that specific variable, the result is not going to change.
So we're going to break down the 3 main bottlenecks today, the 3 stages where people usually get stuck. Because according to this WRAC framework, you're either invisible, you're robotic, or you're risky.
That is the roadmap for today. Invisible, robotic, or risky.
Okay, let's start with the first one, the invisible candidate. This is the person who applies and just never gets a phone call.
Right.
They are totally qualified. They have the exact experience requested, but they are getting 0 traction.
This is definitely the most frustrating stage because you feel like you're just screaming into a void. But the diagnosis here is almost always technical. It's what they call technical invisibility.
We're talking about the bots, aren't we? The applicant tracking systems.
We absolutely are. But I think a lot of people misunderstand what the ATS actually does. People think it's just looking for keywords.
Right. Like if I just type project management on my resume enough times, I'll win the game.
Yeah. Or the people who hide text.
You mean I can't just copy-paste the whole job description in tiny white text at the bottom of the page? I heard that was like a genius hack.
Yeah, please do not do that. The systems are way smarter than that now, and the recruiters definitely check for it. But here's the fascinating thing about WRC's approach. They don't just guess at what the bots want.
Oh, real good.
No, they utilize a digital ATS environment that tracks over 2,000 job listings and corporate requirements.
Right.
They essentially run resumes through a massive simulator.
2,000 requirements. That seems wildly excessive. What could they possibly be checking for?
Honestly, everything. Margins far, embedding, header structures, date formats. They treat the resume not as a nice brochure about your life, but as a literal piece of code.
A piece of code.
Okay.
That makes sense.
And if you use a one-size-fits-all resume, which is actually the #1 mistake they cite, you're essentially trying to run a program that just isn't compatible with the employer's operating system.
So the resume isn't bad in a literary sense. I mean, it might be beautifully written with great action verbs, but the machine simply can't parse it.
Precisely. You fail what they call structural adherence. The digital gatekeeper scans your document, gets completely confused by a weird text box or a fancy two-column layout, and just discards it.
So you are invisible.
You literally do not exist to the human hiring manager. They never even saw your name.
That is maddening. To think you could actually be the perfect candidate, but because you used some creative template you bought online, you're just out.
It is maddening, but the flip side is it's also highly fixable. That's the good news here. If you audit yourself and realize, okay, I've sent 3 applications and got 0 calls, your problem isn't your personality.
Right.
It isn't your interview skills. It's literally just data entry.
You basically just need a debugger.
You do. And WRAC actually breaks this down into tiers of intervention. If this is your problem, you don't need a massive, expensive career overhaul.
Okay, so what do they suggest?
They mention a basic resume and CV revision service for around $55. It's essentially a code cleanup service to fix the technical documentation.
Or for the people who want to learn how to do it themselves, they have that step-by-step guide for what, like $25.99?
Right. And the big takeaway here isn't necessarily buy the product. The takeaway is you need to identify the bottleneck. If you aren't getting calls, stop stressing about whether you're good enough.
Just fix the document so the machine can read it.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's say we fix the code, we beat the bots, the phone finally rings, we get the email saying, we'd love to chat.
Great news.
We do the phone screen, we get invited to the Zoom interview, we do 3 of these interviews.
And then rejection, rejection, rejection.
So now we have a totally new diagnostic pattern. We aren't invisible anymore, we're in the room.
Exactly. The bottleneck has moved down the funnel. Now we are dealing with what the sources call the interpersonal shutdown. This is where WRAC identifies the robotic candidate.
I feel like robotic is a pretty harsh word. Most people I know just try to be really professional in interviews. They want to be polished.
And that is exactly the trap. Polished very often turns into rehearsed. And rehearsed almost always reads as fake to the interviewer.
Because you're so focused on just getting the answer right.
Yes. You're reciting a script you wrote in your head the night before. And when you do that, 2 dangerous things happen. First, you actually stop listening to the question they asked because you're just waiting for your cue to deliver your pre-planned line.
Oh, I've definitely done that.
Right. And second, your body physically shuts down. They call these somatic indicators.
Somatic indicators. So we're talking about body language signals.
It's deeper than just basic body language. It's about systemic tension. The sources talk about posture in a really interesting way here. We're all told since we were kids to sit up straight right.
Yeah, posture 101. Shoulders back, don't slouch.
True, because slouching looks lazy and unprofessional. But WRAC specifically warns against being too upright.
Too upright.
Yeah, if you are rigid, if you're holding yourself perfectly still, it actually signals defensiveness. It tells the interviewer's subconscious, I am in danger. I am protecting my vital organs.
Wow, so I'm sitting there trying to look like a polished professional, but I actually look like a prey animal bracing for an attack.
A little bit, yes. You look highly anxious. And the thing about anxiety is that it's contagious. If you're tense, the interviewer gets tense.
And nobody hires the person who made them feel physically tense for 45 minutes.
Exactly.
This actually reminds me of that math formula in the source notes. I stare this thing for a solid 10 minutes. It looked like something straight out of a physics textbook.
Oh, the probability formula.
Yeah, P success equals... well, can you walk us through this? Because I think this explains the robotic problem better than anything else we've talked about.
I love this formula. It's basically the nerd's guide to charisma. So P success is the probability you get the job offer, and it's represented as a fraction.
Okay, hit me with the numerator. The top part of the fraction.
The top part is preparation multiplied by conversational flexibility, and then you add nonverbal signaling.
Wait, so it's preparation multiplied by flexibility.
That is the key insight right there. It's a multiplier. Let's say you are the most prepared candidate in the history of the world. You literally memorize the company's annual report.
Okay, so my prep score is a 10.
Right. But because you're so locked into your memorized script, you can't pivot. You can't laugh at a joke. You can't answer a weird, unexpected question naturally. So your flexibility is a 0.
And 10 times 0 is 0.
0. Your probability of success completely collapses. This is exactly why the robotic candidate fails. They think preparation is enough, but without flexibility, preparation is actually a liability.
That is genuinely mind-blowing. So you're actually better off being a little less prepared if it means you can actually have a normal human conversation.
100%. Because you have to look at the denominator too, the bottom of the fraction. The thing that divides your success score is anxiety plus perceived risk,
So if I'm stiff and robotic, my anxiety score is super high.
which drives the denominator up and brings your total probability score way down.
Okay, so how do we fix the math here? How do we stop being robots?
WRAC's advice is a bit counterintuitive. They say be a little loose. Treat the interview like a conversation, not a legal deposition.
Which is hard when you really need the job.
It is, but they suggest practical exercises, like practicing your posture while talking to a friend about something totally unrelated to work.
Just getting used to being relaxed in your body while speaking.
Right. And eye contact is the other really big variable here, specifically for the nonverbal part of the equation. If you aren't looking at them, you're missing the feedback loop.
You're flying blind.
Exactly. The sources note that introverts really struggle here. If you look away, you miss the buy-in signals. The nod that says, I agree, or the furrowed brow that says, wait, explain that better.
You miss all the cues.
You do. And if you're really struggling with this, if you just can't tell if you're doing it, WRAC offers an interview prep and coaching session for $215. The real value there is just having an expert look at you and say, hey, stop freezing up every time we talk about your weakness.
Right, you get immediate expert feedback. Okay, so let's say we fixed the resume.
Yeah.
We're invisible no more.
Check.
We've loosened up. We're highly flexible. We're getting the interviews. We're having great natural conversations. We're making eye contact. We're laughing. But we still get the no.
This is the third bucket.
Yeah.
And honestly, this is the one that really breaks people's hearts.
Because you did everything right. You fully prepared and you performed perfectly.
You performed, yes, but you failed to forecast. This is what they call the risky candidate.
This was the biggest aha moment for me in the entire stack of research. The fundamental distinction between performance and forecast. I feel like we really need to unpack this because we are trained basically from kindergarten that if we get the answer right, we get the gold star.
Right, it's the standard academic mindset. Did I answer question 3 correctly? Did I explain that complex Excel project well?
That's the post-interview spiral, replaying every answer.
Exactly. That is performance. That is looking backward at what you did in the past.
But hiring managers aren't history teachers.
No, they are not. They are investors. Think about it like the stock market. You don't buy a stock just because it did well last year. You buy it because of where you think it's going next year. Hiring someone is basically buying a futures contract on an employee.
So I can sit there and give you perfect, polished examples of my past work.
Yeah.
But if I don't help you visualize my future value to your specific company,
You're leaving it entirely up to them to guess. And if there is any ambiguity at all, if you have a gap in your resume, if you're switching industries, or if you've been out of the workforce for a while, their forecast defaults to risk.
they fill in the blanks with fear. Why hasn't she worked in 6 months? Is she lazy? Is she unreliable?
Exactly. The final decision is based on their forecast of your trajectory. So the rejection at this stage isn't about what you said. It's about their interpretation of your history.
So how do you fix a bad forecast? Because, I mean, you can't change your history. If you have a 2-year gap, the gap is there.
You can't change the history? No, but you can absolutely change the narrative. WRAC calls this strategic narrative construction. You have to switch from playing defense to playing offense.
Give me an example of that. How does a risky candidate play offense?
Okay, let's say you took 2 years off to care for a sick parent. A defensive candidate comes in and basically apologizes for it. They say, sorry about the gap. I had some family issues, but I'm ready to work now.
Which sounds weak.
It does. It leaves all the perceived risk right there on the table.
So what's the offensive version?
The offensive version is saying, I stepped away for 2 years to manage a highly complex family health crisis. In that time, I had to manage complicated logistics, high-stress decision-making, and financial planning under extreme pressure. I am returning now with a level of resilience and crisis management that I simply didn't have before, and I'm ready to apply that directly to your team's projects.
Oh, wow. That is brilliant. You just turned the ultimate liability into a massive asset.
You controlled the forecast. You told them very clearly, this isn't a risk. This is actually where my strength comes from.
That is so powerful. And I assume that brings us to the strategic overview report they offer. That's the higher ticket item in the materials, right? The $430 one.
It is, and that service is really for the candidate who needs a total executive narrative overhaul. It includes a career mantra and a career action plan. It's about building that strategic story so tight that the employer doesn't see risk anymore. They only see opportunity.
It's fascinating because this concept really applies to everyone, from a top executive all the way down to an entry-level worker.
Hmm.
But I want to pivot slightly here because WREC has a broader mission that I think makes this whole methodology even more important. They don't just work with corporate climbers.
No, not at all. And honestly, this is the true heart of their work. They focus heavily on bridging the wage gap and creating qualified candidates through education, especially for people facing massive systemic barriers.
Right, the source materials highlight their specific work with reentry career pathways for people post-incarceration and DV empowerment and employment for domestic violence recovery. And if you think about the risky candidate concept in that specific context, if you are a reentry candidate coming out of prison, the risk forecast from an employer is naturally going to be sky high.
It's completely off the charts. And that is exactly why the rule of three is so critical for those specific groups. Because if a reentry candidate gets 3 rejections in a row, it is so incredibly easy to just say, society doesn't want me. It's hopeless.
It just confirms their absolute worst fear.
It does. But the WRAC framework comes in and says, no, it is not hopeless. It's just data. It simply means the narrative you are currently using to explain your past isn't effectively mitigating the risk perception yet.
That is an incredibly empowering shift. It moves the problem from, I am fundamentally broken, to my strategy just needs an adjustment.
Exactly. It gives the candidate their agency back. And I really appreciate that WRAC makes this methodology accessible across the board. We talked about the $400 report earlier, but for these groups, they have a whole spectrum of solutions for every budget.
Right, they have the Fresh Start support for just $12 or a beginner's interview guide for $15.
Yes, literally the price of a sandwich.
And they also mentioned subscription services, right?
Yes, they have 6 or 12-month subscriptions for long-term support and bi-monthly seminars. So whether you're trying to become a VP or you're just trying to get your very first job after a major life crisis, the core logic remains exactly the same.
Audit the rejection, find the pattern, fix the strategy.
That's the formula.
It really reframes the entire job search process. It proves it's not just a lottery. It is a system. And systems can be navigated if you actually have the manual.
It stops the spiral. It stops you from lying awake in bed at night thinking, what is wrong with me? And starts you thinking, okay, logically, which variable in the equation do I need to tweak today? Is it my technical formatting? Is it my flexibility?
That shift from raw emotion to clear analysis is huge. So let's quickly recap this forensic audit one more time, just to lock it in for everyone listening.
Sure thing. Step 1, count the rejections. If you hit 3 in a row at the exact same stage, stop applying. You have a diagnostic pattern.
Step 2, identify the bucket. If you aren't even getting to speak to a human, you are the invisible candidate.
That means it's a technical problem. Check your keywords. Check your structural formatting. Remember, your resume is essentially code, so debug it.
Step 3, if you're getting the interview but no offer, check your behavior. You might be the robotic candidate.
Which is an interpersonal shutdown. Check your posture, check your eye contact, and for the love of everything, throw away the rehearsed script. Increase your conversational flexibility to increase your probability.
And finally, if you're preparing well and performing perfectly but still getting the no, you are the risky candidate.
It's a strategic issue. You are failing the forecast. You need to strategically rebuild your narrative to prove your future trajectory, not just your past performance.
It's such a clean, logical framework. It takes this huge, scary, ambiguous thing called unemployment and just breaks it down into totally solvable problems.
And that is the ultimate goal of the deep dive. Knowledge is really only useful if you can apply it. And now you know exactly how to read the signals.
And if you do have an interview or a big career moment coming up and you feel like you need some tactical, one-on-one support for these high-pressure situations, WRAC Career Services offers comprehensive interview performance coaching. It's designed specifically for these challenges.
You can visit our website for more details on how we can help you turn that nervous energy into a really sharp focus.
Before we sign off today, I want to circle back to that idea of forecast versus performance one last time. Because I think that's the thought that is going to stick with me the longest.
It really is the game changer.
We spend so much energy, so much stress trying to prove we are good enough today. We show off our past skills, our trophies, our degrees.
Well, you absolutely do. But the person sitting across the table is trying to solve a problem they're going to have 6 months from now.
So here's the provocative thought I want to leave everyone with today. The next time you walk into an interview, whether it's on Zoom or in a corporate boardroom, I want you to ask yourself this. Are you just trying to prove you can do the job today? Or Are you actively helping them forecast who you will be tomorrow?
The difference between those two mindsets is massive.
The difference might be exactly why you're getting the interview, but not the offer. Think about that. Don't just be a candidate. Be a future asset.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.
See you then.